these older Lincolns and Cadillacs, they have a tendency to get play in the steering column, and or they'll be wandering all over the road. And there's a few different ways to fix this. I'm going to show you how to do it the inexpensive way, and then I'm going to show you how to fix it if you can't fix it the inexpensive way. So there is a couple parts that you'll have to remove and replace. Okay, so this is a 1963 Lincoln Continental. And this suspension is going to be kind of similar. It's pretty much going to be very similar to the Cadillac, to a 66, to a 63, 64, 65, 66, all the way to the 70s on the Cadillac, and very similar on the Lincoln. So the suspensions are very similar. What happens when your suspension starts going bad, or you start finding a lot of play, is you start having the ball joints go bad. Well, there's a couple different things you can do to stop the ball joints from going bad. And you'll see some grease fittings right there underneath the ball joints, which are very easy to access. So remember, this is the Lincoln Continental. I'm going to show you the Cadillac, and you're going to notice it's exactly the same thing. Okay, so here's a 1969 Cadillac. The 69 and 70 are identical cars, but all the Cadillacs in the 60s are also very similar. So I'm going to show you where the grease fittings are on this one. Okay, so this one's a little bit different because it does have custom suspension, but the grease fittings are going to be right underneath that control arm, and there's going to be a grease fitting up top in that upper control arm. At the same time, you're going to find fittings all around the linkage. So that's the steering linkage, and you're looking at a grease fitting right there. Okay. So the first thing you're going to have to do if you start having play in the linkage, you're going to have to get yourself a grease gun, and you're going to have to lube those. I'll show you how to do that in a second. Okay, so this is an upper control arm for the Cadillac. The upper control arm for the Cadillac is pretty much exactly the same as a Lincoln. Of course, it's a little bit different in size, but overall it's the same concept, and it's pretty much the same thing. So take a look at the control arm and see where that grease fitting is. Okay, notice that there's no fitting, it's just a hole. So what happened is the grease fitting came on. And when you lose grease fittings, this is the reason why cars start having problems with ball joints going bad. And that's actually a big issue that will give you a lot of clunking. You'll hear a lot of bumps, a lot of jumps, and you'll get a lot of wandering or a lot of problems with your steering and with your suspension. So if you see this in your car, before you jump into replacing the actual ball joint, what you can do is you can get yourself a pack of grease fittings, and it looks like this, and you find the correct grease fitting that fits there, and then now you have a way to grease them. And let's take a look. Let's see if we have one. You thread them in by hand, and then you snug them tight with a wrench. So this particular one is a 3/8. Okay. Just get it nice and tight. Okay, there you go. So once that grease fitting is installed, the next thing you're gonna have to do is you have to get yourself a grease gun and grease the ball joint. Get yourself the cheapest one you can find. So what you do, you press to get this started. You just press the end of the grease gun into the fitting, and then you just start pumping. You just start pumping. And what you're gonna see is that lower part, or that cover around the ball joint, you're gonna see it expand because you're gonna fill it up with grease. Usually what I do, I wait to see just a little bit of grease come out, and that's when I'm done. Let's take a look. So you can see it, you can kind of see it blowing up a little bit. There you go. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So that's how you grease a ball joint, And that's how you grease the fittings in your suspension. And you can do this for a Cadillac, for a Lincoln. You can do this for a newer vehicle. Before you start replacing parts, this is what you're going to want to do. If it's obvious that there's a lot of play on that ball joint or in your fittings, yeah, you're going to have to replace them. But save yourself some money, save yourself the hassle by just getting yourself a simple grease gun, doing a quick inspection of your suspension, and finding out if you're actually missing some grease fittings or not. A lot of times, once you grease the fittings and you're still having those same issues, it's going to be your ball joints. Now, that's an example of an upper ball joint, and your lower ball joint is going to be very similar. This is an example of your lower ball joint. Now, it's not that difficult to replace these things, but it is a little bit of work, so hopefully greasing those fittings or greasing those ball joints first will get that taken care of. So a lot of times when it's not the ball joints, you're going to have problems with your steering linkage. Now, this is an example of a steering linkage. I'm just going to leave these in the bags, but you'll be able to take a look and just get an idea of what these parts are. This is an idler arm. Both the Lincoln and the Cadillac are exactly the same. Obviously, you're not going to order a Cadillac part for a Lincoln. You're going to order the part specific for the car. But they both have idler arms. And then you have your steering linkage. Now, the ball joints, you're going to have an upper and a lower ball joint. That's an upper ball joint right there. And this is a lower ball joint. They're actually extremely similar, but the thing is that the parts are made specific for one side or the other side of the car. So make sure that you don't intermix them, and make sure you order the correct ball joints for your car. And this is your steering gearbox. Now, this is an expensive part of the car. This is obviously a brand new part right here, but the thing is that most of the time you don't have to replace this. So if you jump the gun and you buy it, you're going to end up in this situation. We're going to have an extra part sitting in the garage because it's not going to be the issue. So I recommend that you don't get fixated on the steering gearbox and look at greasing your fittings first. So these are all the different parts of the suspension, and this is all the different parts that make up the steering linkage. If this helps you, please make sure to subscribe and like it, and I'll make more similar videos.